Hi everyone, this is Maggie from Esri Canada's Technical Support, back with another video in our Getting Started with ArcGIS Pro series. Today we will be going over the basics of editing with ArcGIS Pro. We will look at three different aspects of editing, starting with setting up our environments for editing, then creating new features, and then finally modifying any existing features. Let's get started with setting up our editing environment. Today I'm working with a project that I've already set up with one map and a few layers that are coming from file geodatabases. It's just showing the Trinity Bellwoods neighborhood in Toronto with a couple of streets, some parks, and the schools. I also have a layer for all of the neighborhoods of Toronto. One of the first things we need to understand when editing features in ArcGIS Pro versus ArcMap is the concept of an editing session. Anyone who's familiar with using ArcMap will know that you need to stop and start editing sessions, but editing sessions don't work the same way with ArcGIS Pro. An editing session will be automatically started once you make your first edit, and it will stop when you save your edits. This allows a more seamless transition into editing as you work on your map, as you don't have to worry about turning that setting on and off, and you don't have to worry about setting a workspace for editing. Any feature that's in your map that has editing turned on will be able to be worked on at the same time. There's also no longer an editing toolbar that we need to add to your map. All of our editing tools can be found in our editing ribbon. You can access it with this tab here. You can see all of our tools. This is essentially the same idea as the editing toolbar, but you just don't have to add it. It's here by default, and it's not exactly the same layout as what you would see in ArcMap. So now that you have an idea of some of the differences in getting started with editing in ArcMap versus ArcPro, let's set up our editing options. These options can be accessed in the Project tab. You'll see the options there, or directly in the editing ribbon under the Manage Edit section by clicking on this little button here to open the editing options. There are a lot of different options that you can set up when you're going to start working on a project. And so it's definitely something you're going to want to look at yourself to see everything that you can do. There's a whole bunch of different settings. Today we're just going to look at some of the basic ones for this project. I'm pretty happy with most of the default options that are turned on. I'm happy to see that we've got, for example, to show the symbology when we're sketching. I find that makes it a lot easier to see what's going on. We've got the enable double click to finish a drawing. That's great. It's a familiar action to be able to double click and finish off any kind of editing. I'm also going to turn on today showing dynamic constraints in the map. This is going to show information when you're drawing features. Sometimes it can be a bit distracting when you're working on your project, but it's nice when I'm going to be doing a demonstration. You can see better what's going on. That's something that you could always consider using. One of the more important sections in here that we're going to look at is under the session settings. So there's a lot of options for saving in here that you might want to take a look at that are kind of unique to ArcGIS Pro. One of the great settings is this automatically save edits option. When you turn that on, you have the option to set your map to automatically save all the edits you're doing at either a time interval that you can change or after a number of operations. This is really great if you're going to be doing a lot of editing over a long period of time in a day and you maybe don't always remember to get those edits saved. Having this little reminder every 10 minutes, every 30 minutes, every hour, whatever you want to set it to, will just really help you to avoid losing any edits that you haven't saved. I'm not going to use this today, but it is a great function to take a look at if that's something that you might be doing longer periods of editing. If you are going to have that setting turned on, I definitely think you should also want to turn on this Show Dialog to confirm Save Edits option. What that does is it basically makes a little pop-up that shows up on your screen when it's time to save your edits, saying, do you want to save your edits? That's going to help you avoid anything that you don't want getting saved going into the final product. Just as a little reminder, it pops up and you can always say no if you don't want it to save so that you can remove anything you don't want going in. But if you don't have that turned on, it's just going to automatically save whatever you have. So you may get some things in there that you don't want to see. I am going to turn on Save Edits when saving the project. I think that's also a great function. I know a lot of people get confused over which one they've saved, and I've seen a lot of cases where people will think they've saved their edits, but they've only saved their project, and then they lose a lot of editing that they've done. So that's a great option to turn on when you're going to be doing some editing. That's all I'm going to change in here for today, but definitely take a look at all the other options that you have when you're going to be doing your own editing. I am going to include a link in the description below that links to our documentation on the editing options, so you can review that as well and get a better idea of what all of the different options mean. Before we close out of our options dialog, there is another section that would be great to take a look at. So let's go down into the Customize the Ribbon section. There's some pretty handy tools in here. The accelerators are really great, especially if you're somebody who's used to working with the hotkeys or shortcuts when editing in ArcMap. What this does is it lets you take a function that you'd be using in ArcGIS Pro. You can take a look at the popular commands, or you can search all of the different geoprocessing tools, different commands, and you can set up accelerator or key actions that will prompt that to occur. So for example, if I'm going to be using the edit vertices function a lot, I can select that. I can add an accelerator to that. So I want to make it be Alt-V, and then I can assign it. So now whenever I use Alt-V, it'll activate this edit vertices tool. Another thing you can do in here is you can create a custom ribbon. So if there's a large number of tools that you're going to be doing at the same time, or there's lots of tools you want to use all the time and you want those all kind of grouped together in the same ribbon, you can set up new ribbons in here. So I'm going to open up a new tab. I'm going to just rename that. Okay. And then you can add in tools to that new tab. So you're going to put a group in first. I'm going to rename the group. Okay. And then you can use this add or remove function to bring things over. So let's add the delete to it. You can see it's added. Let's add finish. Let's add the polygon create tool. Just some different tools that maybe you're going to want to use. You can go through and look at anything. You can pretty much add, I believe you can add any tool that's in ArcGIS Pro over into your custom ribbon. And then once you click OK here, you're going to close out of the options and you're going to see Arc Pro kind of flash for a moment while it adds this custom ribbon that I've set up. So let's see. And there you go. We've got our custom ribbon added. Here's our group with our tools. You could add more groups and different tools and set this up however you want, but this is just to get an idea of what we're looking at and how that's going to look. One last thing we want to do before we get started with actually making some edits to our data is we want to set up our panes here for editing. We can open up the different panes by using the tool buttons just inside the edit ribbon, or pretty quickly we can go over to the view ribbon. We can use the reset panes option and select reset panes for editing. Now you're going to see we've got our catalog, we've got create features, we've got attributes, and modify features all opened up and easy to access. So that starts us off in a good place to get going with making some edits. Okay, now we can actually start editing our data, and we're going to begin today by creating some new features. In the Create Features tab, we can see that we have all of our features that are editable. We can see their feature templates. You're going to notice that I've got my parks feature here, my roads, and my schools, but I don't have my neighborhoods feature. That's because I don't actually need to edit that today. I'm only really concerned with these other three features. So what I've done is over in this list by editing section, the pencil icon, I've turned off the neighborhoods. But if the neighborhoods, I do want to end up editing it, I can turn it back on and it'll be added to the feature templates. I'm going to turn off the neighborhoods again because I don't need that right now. I'm also going to go over to this selection section, list by selection, and make sure neighborhoods is turned off there as well because I won't be needing to select that and I wouldn't want to select that by mistake and make edits to the wrong layer later on. So we're good with that. Let's start by creating a new park feature. I have the majority of the parks in this Trinity Bellwoods neighborhood already digitized, but I am missing one park right over here. So let's zoom into this section and take a look at this little park, little parkette. To add a new feature for a polygon, it's pretty simple. All I need to do is select the parks in my feature templates, and then I'm going to see a list of different options for how I can draw the polygon. This is a pretty small, simple park, so I'm just going to use the regular Create Polygon feature. That's already activated, and now all I need to do is on my map, click on the four corners of the drawing, and you can see because I've turned on that setting in my editing options, you can see the distance and direction of the lines that I'm drawing, which is a handy tool for demos, but you can see how it might become a little distracting if you're doing a lot of editing. And then once I get to the final corner, all I need to do is double click, and that polygon is finished. So I have a new park feature added to my park dataset. The next thing you need to do is fill in the attributes for that feature. So I'm going to open up the Attributes tab. And you can see the only thing I'm missing here is the name of the park. So you just have to go into that field and add the name of the feature. Enter, and I can apply it. And now that feature has a name. Now let's go ahead and add a new road feature. When I was making this road dataset, I clipped it from a larger dataset to the neighborhood we're working in. And you can see here that I'm missing the major road College Street. So I'm going to need to add this back into my layer. So we're going to switch back over to Create Features. And I'm going to select Major Road from my template because I've got the different road options separated out into the different categories of road. So I'll select Major Road. And then I see similar options, but they are different to the polygon. And this time I'm actually going to use a different tool. I'm going to use the Trace tool, which will let me create a line segment that traces along another feature. Because this boundary for the neighborhood goes all along the middle of College Street, I'm going to use that as the feature to trace. So I'll switch over to Trace. I can have my snapping turned on for editing, which you can do in here, or you can also do it down at the bottom right here. So snapping is on. So I'll click on the neighborhood's vertex here. And then I just click and drag all the way along this neighborhood line. I'm following some of the wrong lines here. Go all the way along the neighborhood line, and then once I get to the corner, I can just let go, double click, and my new feature is made. What's great about the trace method of creating new features is when you do have features that are going to line up exactly, this helps us avoid any issues like little slivers, little gaps between our lines that we don't want to happen. And it also is a lot faster than if we had to click on every single vertex when we're creating this line. So using the trace feature whenever possible is a really handy tool. Just like we did with the polygon, I'm going to go ahead and update the attributes to add the name of the road. You can see I have a lot of fields here, but it's not really important for me to fill all those out right now. If you're doing this on your own data, you'd want to fill out everything that you can in the attribute table. It's not great to leave them blank, but just for the sake of this, we don't need to have everything filled in. Enter, and then I'll apply. And again, we have our new feature created. So I'm just going to clear my selection. And the last thing we want to add today is I am missing a school. I am missing a point feature. So we're going to go back over to the Create Features one more time. We're going to select on the type of school. So I'm going to choose an English public school. That's the type of school I need to add. And then you have a lot less options when you're dealing with points because they're just much simpler features. I'm just going to leave the basic create point feature tool. And very simply, all you need to do is navigate to where the school is on your map and just click. And you've added your new point. This time, I'm actually going to edit the attributes in the attribute table instead of the attribute panel here. So I'm just going to go into the schools layer, right click, say attribute table, and you can see I have access to all of the fields here as well, and it's highlighted because that feature is currently selected. We do typically recommend that you would do your attribute editing in that attributes tab, but sometimes when you're doing a large number of edits, it's just a lot easier to navigate through this type of table instead of going in and updating the attributes in this panel here. And this is particularly true when you're editing more than one record at a time. So we're just going to go over here to update the school's name. So and then to move to the next section to the right, we just press the tab key. Public school, we tab again. Get the address in. The English public is automatically filled out because of our feature template. Street name again, and last the postal code. And I can click enter to finish editing. You can also navigate through the table using the up and down keys. If you are going to be making changes this way, you simply would just navigate to whichever field you want to change, and then you should be able to start typing to change in that field. So I'll just change this back to what it already is. Press enter, and then your editing is done for that field. So I'm just going to take a look at what we've got here. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to clear my selection. I'm going to also now save my edits. Okay, so we've taken a look at the 3 different main features you're going to be creating and how to do that. So now let's move along to modifying some of our existing features in our map. I'll close out this table for now. There are 2 things that you can look at that may be helpful when you're going to be doing editing, especially modifying your data, and those are going to be accessible down at the bottom here. We have our snapping options, which again, you can edit in the edit ribbon, but they can be accessed down here as well. So when you're going to be doing editing, it's probably going to be very helpful to have snapping turned on, and you can take a look at your different snapping options down here. But there's also a nice grid that you can use. So I'm going to turn the grid on just to give you a look at what that looks like. So you can turn on the grid, and you can see that it doesn't really help me with my data because my data is not aligned exactly north-south like this. But one great thing about the grid is you can actually rotate it. So if I go ahead and rotate the grid, I can take it here and I can align it with my roads layer. I'm not going to need this today, so I'll turn it off, but that's just nice to know that you have that option there. And if you want to reset your grid, all you have to do is use that refresh button right at the bottom there. So now it's back to normal. I'll turn that off. There are a large number of different tools that can be used when you're modifying your data. Here you can just see like how many options you have, and there are even more things that you can use that maybe aren't showing here. So we're just going to look at a couple of the more popular, more basic ones today, but definitely take the time to look into these different tools on your own when you have a chance. And I will put some documentation below that discusses the different editing tools. The first editing tool that we're going to look at today is really the most basic thing. It's deleting features that you may have done incorrectly. So I'm just going to zoom down into the map here, and we can see this little pink line. It is classified as a different type of line, but it's not something that I need in my map. I don't want it in my data set, and I'm just going to get rid of it. So it's pretty easy to deal with that. I'm just going to activate the select tool. I'm going to click on that line. There's 2 sections to it, so I'm going to actually click hold the shift key on my keyboard and click the other section of the line. And you can either use the delete key here, or you can simply press delete on your keyboard. And now that line is gone. I'm just going to save my edit. Yes. And perfect, don't have that feature anymore. So that's a pretty simple tool, but something you're going to use all the time when you're doing editing is deleting things you don't need. And it's as simple as clicking the delete key on your keyboard. Next, I want to take a look at some other roads that I have in here, and I want to finish some roads that are incomplete. Just like we had this issue up here where our College Street was missing, I have some sections of Bathurst that also are missing, as well as over here on Dover Court Road, there's a big section missing. So I'm going to use a tool today called Continue Drawing. So I'm going to continue the drawing of a feature to get these lines finished. So let's go ahead. I'm going to select the feature that I want to continue, which is going to be this one. And then I'm going to use the Continue Drawing tool. So I can get that from either in here, or there's the Modified Features section over here. And there's Continue Feature. So now you can see that I have the end of the feature activated and I can move it around. And I'm going to go right up here. I'm actually going to snap it to the end of this line first. And then I'm going to go all the way up to College Street and hit that road endpoint and double click to finish. You can also use, if you maybe don't click quickly enough or you make a mistake, you can undo an edit by just using the Control-Z option on your keyboard, so Control and the Z or Z key. So you can undo edits that way and then do your double click again, or you can click once and use F2 on your keyboard, the F2 key, to finish a drawing, or you can also use this, this Finish Drawing button down here. As you can see, F2 will work as well, so we'll use that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that a few more times for some other lines that need to be continued. And perfect. Now all of my lines are the correct length. Another problem that I have with my road features right now, though, is that a few of them are broken into multiple segments, and I would prefer them to be one continuous feature. So I'm going to use a different modifying tool, and this one is called the Merge tool. So I'm going to select my features that I want to merge and hold the Shift key while selecting so I can select more than one, and then merge those features together. So perfect, Bathurst Street is now one continuous line feature. Another way that I can select features to do this when I'm dealing with lots of smaller segments, like down here on Queen Street, is I can use the Select by Attributes tool. So I'll open that up. I'll select from my roads, expression, where the road name is equal to Queen Street. Can apply. Okay, and now I can see all of my Queen Street segments are selected, and I can merge those together. So perfect, I've got one long feature now. And I can use this same tool when I'm dealing with multi-part features that are polygons or points. For example, here I've got my Trinity Bellwoods Park, the main park in the community, that is broken into two pieces because it was across a road. But I prefer this to be one multi-part feature. So using the same merge tool, I can make a new selection, select the two halves of my park, and merge them together. The last editing tool that I want to take a look at would be to reshape an existing polygon feature. Right now, my parks are the correct shape for the area that they're in, but I do want to take a look at how those tools would work. So let's just review how the Reshape tool and the Edit Vertices tool work, for example. So let's open up Reshape. This is a really handy tool because it allows you to extend or cut into an existing polygon feature. I'm going to use it here to square off the corner of my park. All I need to do is connect to my polygon in two locations to change the shape. So I'm going to click on this corner, I'm going to change it to go out to the road, and then I'm going to connect back into my polygon. When I double click, you can see that the shape has been updated to include that new area. I don't want to actually keep this because the park was correct in the first place, so I'm going to use the Control-Z undo command and put it back to the way it was. Edit vertices is similar to the Reshape tool, but you have a little bit more control over the existing features. Vertices, you'll have access to all of them once it's turned on, and all you would need to do is click and drag to change the shape. So I can change the vertice here, square off my park, maybe change the angles of things. It's a pretty handy tool that you'll use often when modifying features. All you need to do to finish doing that is either click down here on the Finish Drawing section or F2 again. But I don't want to save this, so I'm going to Ctrl-Z, undo those changes, and we're good to go. That's all the changing I want to do to my data today, so that's all the editing we're going to go over. I'm going to save the edits that I've made so far and continue working on different aspects of mapping. Hopefully this got you started with how to do editing in ArcGIS Pro and gave you some of the basic tools you'll use with your own mapping projects. Don't forget to review the documentation that we have available to teach you about some of the other tools we didn't get a chance to look at today. And stay tuned for upcoming videos in our Getting Started with ArcGIS Pro series. Happy mapping!